When the light went out. My story. My name is Michael Reeves. I'm 32 years old, and this is probably the hardest story I've ever had the courage to tell. It all began 3 years ago, on a summer evening that felt completely ordinary. I was on my way home from work and stopped by a small bookstore in downtown Austin. I wasn't looking for anything specific, just wandering between the shelves, trying to quiet my mind. And then, I heard her voice. "Are you also looking for something light? Something to distract you from life?" she asked, standing by the same shelf. I looked up and saw her, Emma Collins. A girl with a smile that looked like she already knew me. Dark wavy hair, freckles, a loose shirt, and a book she held as if she was afraid to drop it. "Well, you could say that," I answered. "What do you recommend?" She held up the book and winked. This is my favorite way to stay sane. We talked for almost an hour in that store. And another hour later, we were already sitting in the cafe across the street. The beginning of something real. Emma spoke honestly, laughed easily, and never hid behind masks. I fell for her faster than I could even realize. We often walked by the river in the evenings. One night, she stopped, looked out at the water, and said, "Mike, I never thought I'd meet someone who'd make me stop being afraid of the future." I took her hand. "You're not alone anymore." She leaned into me and whispered, "Promise you won't let go." I promised, and at that moment, I still didn't know that sometimes love isn't just holding on. It's learning how to let go without breaking the person you love. The first cracks. After a year together, we started planning a future. She dreamed of her own photo studio. I dreamed of a house just outside the city. Everything seemed so simple. Until one night, driving home from a restaurant, everything changed. We were on the highway, late at night. It had just started raining. The road shone under the streetlights. Emma was laughing at some stupid joke I'd just made. She looked at me and said, "You make me so happy, Mike." And right then, a bright light flashed from the left. A truck ran the red light at the intersection. I remember the sound, metal hitting metal. I remember my head snapping back, my hands trying to hold the steering wheel. I remember Emma's scream. And then, darkness. Consequences no one chooses. When I woke up in the hospital, the doctor stood by my bed. There was no hope in his eyes. "Is she alive?" was the only thing I could say. He nodded carefully. Emma suffered serious spinal injuries. She survived, but she would never walk again. When I first entered her room, she was in a wheelchair, gripping the blanket like she was afraid of falling. She tried to smile, but I could see she was broken inside. "This is my fault," I whispered. "Don't you dare say that," she said sharply. "You almost died too." But in her eyes, I saw fear, not of the injury, but of a future that no longer matched the one we had dreamed of. The end I didn't want. We tried to handle everything together. I drove her to rehab, we watched movies, talked late into the night. But she started pulling away. She became quieter, sharper, cried at night when she thought I couldn't hear. One morning she said, "Michael, you need to live your life. And I don't want to be a burden." "You're not a burden. You're my whole life." She shook her head. "I see how you look at me. You try to be strong. But you're hurting, and I can't let you spend your life on someone who can't walk beside you anymore." "Don't say that. I'm here, and that won't change." "Mike, I made a decision." She found a program in Denver for people with injuries like hers, and she wanted to go alone. I begged her to let me come, but she said, "You have to learn to live without guilt." and without me. That night, she rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I love you." But sometimes, love means giving the other person a chance to be happy, even if that happiness isn't with you. A week later, she left. I watched her being wheeled out of the house, waving to me one last time. I stood on the porch, unable to take a single step, and I knew this was the end of our story. What remained? A year passed. People say time heals everything, but all it really did was teach me how to live with the emptiness. I went back to work, visited my parents more, met friends, pretending everything was fine. But inside, I was hollow. I missed her laugh, her spontaneous messages, the sunrise photos she always sent me first. One night, I found an old box filled with our memories. Tickets from the Galveston Aquarium, a dried flower she gave me after our first big argument, and a small camera she used to photograph everything she loved. I sat on the floor holding that camera, thinking about how life sometimes takes from us the things we're not ready to lose. And then, sometimes, it gives them back when we least expect it. The day everything started again. It happened late in the fall. I was driving home from work when I got a message from an unknown number. "Mike, I'm in town. Can we meet?" I reread it dozens of times. I knew exactly whose message it was. Even with a new number, I knew. It was her. Emma. My heart raced like I was back in that bookstore again. I replied, yes. She asked to meet at the same little cafe where we had first talked. I arrived early, nervous in a way I hadn't been in years. When the door opened, I saw her. Emma rolled in on her wheelchair, but she wasn't the same girl from that Denver hospital. She radiated strength, calm, a kind of dignity only pain and hard battles can give. She smiled at me, that same warm, honest smile I had missed so badly. "Hi, Mike." I sat down beside her, trying to hide the shaking in my hands. "Hey, Em." We sat in silence for a moment, and in that silence, there was more emotion than in any words. A conversation that changes destinies. She spoke first. "You look older." I laughed lightly. "That's because I stopped dyeing my beard," I joked, though we both knew the changes ran much deeper. She looked out the window. "Mike, I thought for a long time about whether I should write to you. I'm glad you did." Emma gripped the wheel rims of her chair. "I learned a lot in Denver. And I faced the thing I feared the most." "What was that?" She took a breath, her voice trembling slightly. "Learning not to hate myself." Those words hit me like a wave. I remembered how she used to look at her legs in that hospital room, with the eyes of someone blaming herself for something she never controlled. "Emma, you were never—" "Let me finish," she said gently. "You have no idea how much I blamed myself. For the accident, for you trying to be stronger than you should have, for ruining our dreams." She exhaled. "And for leaving you. But back then, I didn't know how else to survive." I lowered my eyes. "I know. No, Mike. You don't know everything. What I didn't expect." Emma opened her bag and placed a photo on the table. It was her, standing, holding on to parallel bars, but standing on her own legs. "When?" I whispered, afraid to believe it. "A month ago. I can't stand long, but I can. And I can take a few steps with support." I traced the photo with my finger, afraid it would disappear. "Emma, that's incredible. I wanted to tell you earlier, but I couldn't come back until I felt ready to bring you hope, not pain." I looked into her eyes. And there she was. The same Emma who fought for everything she believed in, even when the world collapsed under her. But there was something I still needed to understand. The question everyone is afraid to ask. Emma, why did you come back now? I asked softly. She pressed her lips together, looked away for a second, then met my eyes again. Because some things you can't let go of, even when you try. You mean us? She smiled sadly. I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to see if we could talk again, without pain, without guilt. We fell silent. A John Mayer song played quietly in the background. Life's strange sense of humor. Emma lifted her gaze. Mike, I'm not asking to go back to how things were. I just want to be honest. I still love you. But it's a different kind of love now. Not the love that suffocates you. The one that lets you breathe. My heart tightened and opened at the same time. Em, I love you too. I always have. But? She asked quietly. I let out a slow breath. But I'm scared of losing you again. She took my hand. Her fingers were warm and familiar. Then don't rush. We can start small. As friends. With walks. With conversations. With just being where we are, right now. For the first time in a long time, I felt relief. When the light returns, we left the cafe slowly. Emma asked me not to help. I need to do this on my own. And I walked beside her, ready to step in if she needed. It was chilly outside. Leaves were falling from the trees, and I couldn't help thinking how nature dies every fall, and then comes back to life again. Maybe we could too. Emma stopped, looked at me, and said, You know, sometimes you have to leave before you can come back. I nodded. Yeah, sometimes you do. She smiled. Will you walk me home? Always. And we went, side by side. Not as a couple, not as strangers, but as two people who survived tragedy and didn't let it destroy the love between them completely. Maybe we won't get back what we had. Maybe we'll build something new. Maybe we'll simply learn how to live without pain. But in that moment, I understood one thing. The light comes back. Always. Sometimes, it just takes a little longer.